Hi, welcome to the video. I thought I'd do a little video on a new toy I've just bought, which is the Line6 Firehawk. Really nice looking unit, really pro looking, sturdy for gigging, really versatile on stage, and yeah, really pleased with it. Been using Line6 gear for quite a few years, and then had a bit of a break with using a Black Star stage 100 head and going back to stomp boxes and so on, and just realised I missed the world of processors so much. I've got so used to that immediate saturation, that infinite almost sustain at whatever volume you want, and just basically I couldn't play valve amps anymore, and I thought there was something wrong with me, and then I thought, no, it's just what you're used to. Go out and buy yourself a new processor and get rid of your amp. So I've done just that, and anyone who's familiar with the Firehawk will know that it's nowhere near the same level of quality as the Helix, but considering it's about 1/10 of the price, I think it makes brilliant financial sense, and just been playing around with it for a couple of days now, and really impressed. The presets are rubbish, which is often the case with a lot of these units. They are not very good, so you do have to get involved. The Firehawk has a app that you Bluetooth. You just download the app to your phone or your tablet, and you Bluetooth the device to it and pair it up, and then you can literally control your guitar tone in real time from your device, which is what I've been doing. So I'll take you through that in a moment. Big influence on my playing was all of the sort of what are now known as hair metal bands, not the rubbish ones, the good ones, you know, the Dockens and the Extremes and the Malmsteens of this world, you know, the Queensryches and what have you. So yeah, not after trying to get a Poison tone or anything like that, but I thought I'd set the bar reasonably high, and I thought I'd go for a sort of cross between a George Lynch and a Nuno Bettencourt type sound. That's, you know, really my thing. And I know Nuno famously used the ADA MP1, I think it was, preamp with some other bits like aura exciters and things like that back on that album, as did the Skid Row boys on their first album, and George Lynch is very famous for being a Soldano guy through and through. So totally different rigs and different sounds, but I think, you know, two great benchmark tones that you can aim for. If you get even close to either of them and somewhere in between, then I think we're doing quite well. So that's what I set out to do, and I'm not saying that what I came up with is in any way phenomenal, but I'm quite pleased with it, and I think for a first attempt it's not bad. So I thought I'd take you through how I came up with my tone, and show you how the app works and what have you, and just play a few bits and pieces. So this is what we did first of all. Okay, so what you got here is the layout of the amp, and the app rather shows you what I'm using. If I go to the amp, there's tons of amps you can choose, and I'm decided after messing around for a good couple of hours to use the Line6 Modern High Gain, which according to the manual is modelled on the Soldano X88R preamp, which is the sort of magenta purple coloured one from the 80s that was made famous by Steve Lukather. He had it in his rig for quite a while. George Lynch from Dockens used it before moving on to the Soldano 100 head. They've got the 100 head in here, but I just preferred the sound of the preamp. It just felt a bit tighter. So I went with that. It automatically selects a cab for you, which was the tread plate, I believe, which is the Mesa Boogie one. Didn't like the sound of that. There's also a lot of people, when I watched other YouTube users with Helix predominantly more than Firehawk, but they seem to like the greenback speakers, but personally for me that were a little bit dark, so I just went with the 412 Brit V30, which is a standard 412 Marshall cab apparently with vintage 30s. Then you come onto the microphone. You have your SM57, which you can have on or off axis. Another little tip for anyone: I spent hours, and I mean hours, because I thought that the on axis was way too fizzy, so I immediately stuck it at 45 degrees, and then just could not get a balance between it being too dark or too bright with the various EQs. What I realised is you actually need that natural fizz from the on axis. You just need to EQ it out a little bit. So that can save you quite a lot of time if you're looking for a similar sound to me. The condensers, the 421 and the 67, maybe for a clean tone, not for distortion. Way too bright, way too bright. So there we go. So we've got the on-axis 57 with a 412 Marshall cab and the Soldano preamp. They're the settings I've got. Not full gain, but quite saturated, and as you can see, it sort of tapers down. Didn't need any presence at all. Even the mids are quite trebly, so I used more mid, as you can see, and very little treble, because it just didn't need it. However, as good as it sounded, it was lacking just a little bit, so I tried various things in front. I know the favourite is to stick a drive pedal in front of the amp. It's been done for donkey's years, like Tube Screamers, Boss OD ones, that kind of thing. But I decided it was, again, because of maybe the preamp model I'd used, it was too much. It sort of didn't add to it, it just made it messy. But it needed something, and I found the Boost EQ pedal, which I'm not quite sure what it's modelled on. I don't think it's an MXR, but it's some kind of boutique-y thing they've modelled it on, and it just literally gives you just some nice minor adjustments if you don't go mad with it. Put gain up a touch, bass up a touch, mid up a touch, just controls that were different to what I had on the amp model, and just made a real nice difference. And then ummed and ahed ages with the inbuilt compressor. This isn't a pedal. You've got loads of compressor pedals on here, but this is modelled on a TC Electronics, I think, rack compressor. It's not movable in the chain, but it's just their sort of standard compressor, and you can stick it on like that, and it really just, for me, I'm very much a lover of the digital thing. I struggle with tube amps, and I know there's going to be people out there screaming at the screen going, dynamics, dynamics, what about your dynamics? But this is 80s hair metal. We don't need to worry about dynamics, and this just brings it right out in the mix. So on with the compressor. Reverb, standard chamber reverb, which is a little bit more modern sounding than spring or plate reverbs for a guitar, I thought, but not overdone it. You know, it's a nice sort of dark sounding reverb, nothing too shimmery, and so that's the sound we got, and it sounds like this. You know, it could be Red Beach, it could be Dockers. Something like that. So a very generic rock sound, which I'm quite pleased with, you know. But trying to go for the Nuno thing, I thought you got to kind of double track it. So what I've decided to do is just got some drums and bass set up on Cubase here, and I've already laid down a couple of the guitar tracks, and I've then created another patch, another guitar patch on the Firehawk, which I'll show you now, with a lot more bottom end to it. And we're just going to blend that in to the existing tone. and then pan it hard left, hard right. So you're going to end up with 4 guitars, 2 of the proper tone, this tone now, and 2 of the bassier tone. It's going to be a totally different amp model, cab, etc., and a slightly lower volume. And we're going to blend that in. Okay, so the second sound is a Line 6 big bottom model. I think someone was a Spinal Tap fan maybe, but this is modelled apparently on a Mesa triple rec, crossed with a Rivera Los Lobotom sub rig, and it just gives a really oomphy bottom end. And I wouldn't use it as my main sound. I certainly wouldn't use it live. Can't see any bonus there when you've got a bass player with you, but for recording and doing this sort of, you know, double tracking thing, I thought it would be nice to use that. So as you can see, bass is pretty much flat out. I did back the drive right off to about 47, you'll see, because it didn't, I wanted to keep the tone. I've got a load of gain with the other patch, and it was only a blending tone, so it wasn't as important, just needed to bring out the appropriate characteristics. So again, mid up, because it's a bottomy sound, it needed more treble, but again, very little presence. Cab wise, this was going into the 412 Mesa, which for this head, as opposed to the other, actually sounded correct, as did the off-axis mic. So it's very model specific. You know, you're gonna need to play around with these settings depending what amp model you basically start with, for sure. This time I stuck a tube screamer. You can see the classic tube screamer there. You have all of these. There's the HD tube screamer, but I prefer the classic 808 because it's just in history. There's a place in everyone's hearts for that little green pedal, so stuck that in front. But you'll see the drive, everything's basically at 12 o'clock, so it's there, and you would think it's not doing anything, but it really is. It's making a nice difference to that dark sounding bottomy amp, just bringing out a bit of natural top end that isn't really there with the amp model. And the same with the reverb. So really simple basically with that one. Nothing fancy, but just a very dark, boomy, bottom ending sounding guitar to blend in with the main tone, and you'll see the results are quite fun. Okay, so you'll see there on Cubase we've got 4 channels for the guitar. The first 2 are guitar 1 and guitar 2, and they are the main tone, my main guitar tone that I would play live with as well. Again, played once and then played again, so 2 separate takes, not one take copied, very important. Have to play it the same thing but play it twice, and then pan it virtually hard left, hard right, but I've gone with about 50 because I just wanted it slightly brought in from the walls, as it were. And then the next 2 is the low guitar 1 and 2. Again, 2 complete different guitar takes, and that is with the lower boomier tone that we talked about, and that is panned fully left, and then the other one fully right. So you get a big stereo separation, huge wide sound, but you'll notice it's slightly lower than the main tone, because we want a little bit of the characteristics and we want the weight, but we don't really want that tone. We want the first tone. That's the primary tone, so that's the one that's got to be heard as the sound, just being supported by the bassier tone to make it sound perfect on a record. And especially when people listen with headphones, these things get noticed a bit more than they otherwise would. So that's what we're doing. Okay, so now we've sorted out our tones, we've pre-recorded a couple of them into Cubase. Let's take the final cut and see what it all sounds like. one of my favourite extreme riffs, one of my favourite guitarists, and a tone that's close enough for me. So if you like what you've heard, go and get yourself a Firehawk and play around with it and get yourself some great tones. Thanks for watching.